Well, hello everyone, and welcome in once again to another great Saturday night here on the Six Screens. Boy, I have to tell you, things are really happening. There's more and more people leaving the Watchtower. It's unbelievable. We're going to be talking about that later on, but Barbara Anderson has a very special program tonight. She has a former elder from New York, and he has a lot to say about the Watchtower. So why don't we bring Barbara and Isaac on? And there they go. They're on stage with us now. So, Barbara, why don't you introduce your guest?
Well, I would if I could pronounce his last name. I've had trouble with that for years.
Carmignani. G is silent.
Carmignani. You can tell what his nationality is from that name.
Oh, I can tell you, I knew without even seeing the last name. There's an Italian man. He's got that Italian. He's got that great Italian look. Really, he's a good guy.
Yeah. Well, ask him what his nationality of his mother.
Well, what's the nationality of your mother, Isaac?
Puerto Rican.
Puerto Rican. Yeah. Wow. Now that's an interesting combination.
Yeah.
It must have been. I bet that was interesting.
Well, maybe we'll hear a little bit about that. Well, I'm going to cut myself loose and let you guys go at it, but I'm here if you need me. Thank you.
Okay, Isaac. Hey, Isaac, this is a silly question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. When was the last time you counted your your hours every month for talking about Jehovah's Witnesses, religion, and belief?
Oh, my goodness. I guess that was 2006 somewhere.
2006. Okay, that's quite a while ago. Yeah. See, if you just held on long enough, they wouldn't have to count it anymore.
I wouldn't have had to do anything then.
Absolutely. Wow. But I got to tell you, I don't count mine, but I still talk about Jehovah's Witnesses and their religion and belief. It's nonstop in my world to talk about that. So, talking with you, we always get on the same subject because we have so much in common. And you're a survivor. And usually we apply that to young people or those who have been abused physically or sexually, and we call them survivors. But you're a survivor too, in a way.
Yeah.
It just depends on how you look at it. You're a survivor, and yet a traumatic life, and in many ways, young life, and but you turned your life to be one of grateful fulfillment. You have a good career and a wonderful family. And so that's why I call you a survivor, because for so many years you were at home. As you were raised, your family were quite demanding on you to involve yourself and think all the time about everything Jehovah's Witnesses required of you. First of all, tell a little bit about when you were baptized. Let's go in that way.
Wow. May 28th, 1978. I'll never forget the day. So I was 11 years old. So I could be inferred from all those information. I was 11. I had an elder in the congregation asking me for many years, what prevents me from getting baptized? And so finally I gave in. I actually probably would have been baptized a lot younger had I followed the original advice I was getting.
Yeah, so you're an example of a youngster being baptized. Just like last time I was on, my husband was too, and he was 8 when
there you go.
He was baptized.
Yeah.
And he said that wasn't unusual, and he really didn't know anything about the witnesses, but I think you did.
Yeah, I did, definitely. I don't know why I was so skeptical. I guess this has led to me eventually leaving, that I was skeptical of getting baptized so young. I did not know why. Maybe
you were trained, though. You were trained from infancy.
I was trained. I think part of what might have run through my young mind was that I was I'd talk in school a little bit too much, and so I wasn't perfect, and I was looking for that, I think. Um, but yeah, I was trained. My goodness, my first time on before any large group of people was at a circuit assembly at the age of 3 with my mom, singing a model a demonstration of how we should sing at the Kingdom Hall. I'm told this because I was 3. I was too young to remember, but I've heard recordings of me belting out "We Thank You, Jehovah," Song 110 in the old Psalm book, across the Queen's Assembly Hall. So that's like a 2,000 seat auditorium without a microphone, and that was my first. So I was in it very young.
Yeah, but for children, some children had a hard time as kids, as witnesses. Others enjoyed it very much. I think in your case, there are great demands made upon you to be a perfect witness kid, but on one side of the coin,
Right.
Right? But on the other side, you enjoyed a lot about.
Yeah, I did. I had fun. I didn't know what I was missing out on either, because I was very sequestered, away from
Yes.
everything except for school. That was the only time I encountered anything outside the witnesses.
You put a story on a discussion board many years ago, 17 years ago,
Yeah.
about your upbringing, and I read it, and I read it back then too, but I reread it, and you didn't have a TV either, did you?
No, the first time I looked at TV was I was 17.
Oh my goodness. What'd you do with yourself?
and I busted my mom doing it. That's how I found out about it. I was up late, and she would bring out this little portable, tiny thing, and she would just watch the late night shows like The Honeymooners and The Odd Couple, and so that was my first, time. And then I would sneak her TV because I knew where she had it, and eventually it became mine.
So she's really strict about raising you to be the perfect Jehovah's Witness. But how did she rationalize the TV watching? I mean, it's not condemned.
Yeah, and actually, I got to say, there was one other time I watched TV, but it was one time, because we did have one, and it was one of the moon shots. It might have been. It might have been the Apollo 11 mission, because I would have been 3, and I remember watching the moon, the surface of the moon, scroll across the screen, so they were in orbit, and I was on my dad's lap. But that was a tube TV, and my mom would keep pulling the tubes out, so I couldn't use it. Eventually, it broke, and I never saw another one until that time when I was 17.
That's fascinating, but you found other things to do because you didn't know you were missing anything, huh?
No. I had plenty to read. I would do science experiments. Fortunately, we had a house, so I could take the basement and play with mechanics, electronics, science kits, read books, listen to records. I found every old album my parents had. So I got turned on to a lot of good entertainment that way,
Mm-hmm. Well, in some ways it was beneficial, because it kind of set you up for the future of, so you really don't regret that. But on the other hand, tell us some of the difficulties, so being raised as a witness by a mother you really loved, who was really, really in love with what Jehovah's Witnesses, and of course definitely. You and her husband. But
and my mom really, really bought in. We were living in New York City, so we would go to Bethel a lot for tours, and that included Watchtower Farms. And every major event, if there was a funeral of a governing body member, a memorial, she would try to be there. So being a witness was all that my mom had,
mm-hmm.
and so that transferred over to me. However, I was also in school. And, as Jehovah's Witnesses, you are taught, especially in those days, to read and study. You studied all the time.
That's right. Mhm.
And so that just carried over to school. And at least my mom was very insistent that I perform well at school. So there was this perpetual feeling of that I'm here in school, but by the same token, I'm not. But I have this secret thing, and I don't want anybody to know, because I had this feeling that being a Jehovah's Witness and fully acting it was weird. No one else was doing it. There were maybe 1, 2 other kids, and they were like me. They didn't project it. So, for example, my mom would give me magazines, or books that she wanted me to leave on my desk when I was in grade school, and I would take my bag, and she caught me doing this because she was involved with the school and she could watch me. I'd take my bag, sit down at the desk, open it, take the book, and shove it underneath, on the little shelf under the top of the desk, so no one would see it, so nobody would know. I didn't want anyone to know that I was a Jehovah's Witness. I didn't want to knock on a classmate's door. I was terrified of that one. Maybe happened one time, because I wanted to be normal. I wanted to fit in.
Yes.
And so the holiday thing, if I wasn't around, I didn't talk about why I wasn't around. I'd make up a story. And I'm sure many Witness kids have done that, make up the presents that I got for Christmas. I didn't really know what to make up, so I'd hear what somebody else got and then twist that a little bit and say I got the same thing, different color.
Since I was a convert, I did the opposite. I was so supremely excited at my early teenage years. I put the books out in school and bragged about we didn't celebrate Christmas. I mean, it's just which way you come from into this, that whatever floats your boat,
Anyone was here. Oh. Sorry about that.
Yeah. I gotta say that to Joe too.
That's all right. That's how live streams go.
Yeah, that's what makes it interesting.
There you go.
So give us a little example of what you wrote years ago on the discussion board about your childhood.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I broke that out into several chapters.
You sure did.
Yeah, there was a part there about extreme discipline.
Yes.
Which, for many witnesses went through this, because the Proverbs do speak about the rod of discipline, and so there are many parents who just took that literally. And my mom, because of being, she'll do anything that she gets, any assignment that she gets, to the best, to the nth degree. It's a shame that she didn't have the opportunity to go to school, college, and seek a profession. She'd have been a wonderful whatever doctor, whatever. And so she brought that to her faith, and that meant for me even physical discipline in the Kingdom Hall. Everybody knew it because she would sit in the front row. So if I was misbehaving,
we tried to sit in the back row with our.
Yeah, we were in front all the time. So if I misbehaved, everybody behind us knew it.
Yeah,
because I was going to get hit over the head. My ear,
or your ear, yeah.
Oh my goodness, that one.
Yeah, some of parents took to pinching.
Yes.
Pinching.
Yeah, that was my mom. She may have started it. I don't know. But yeah,
well,
yeah.
She cared. She cared so much,
Exactly.
and so many of the. But on the other hand, did not. Reading into your mother, particularly in this case, where I'm saying it depends on where you're coming from on this. I mean, some were so anxious to have a perfect kid so that the rest of the congregation would admire, not for other reasons, because they were disciplining the child, but they wanted everybody to know. I know this discussion on child raising right now is really a big deal because of the article that came out just last week in Japan. The
I didn't
article.
get a chance to read that. What was that about in brief? I saw the
Mostly
email today,
about
actually.
children and disciplining, how difficult the kids had it in the congregation,
Wow.
and at home. And there were a number of lawyers that presented it to the press. It's caused quite a stir. Of course, the Watchtower in interview with the press said they never encouraged beating your kids.
Yeah, it was quite abusive.
Oh yes, it was.
Really,
We spanked our
especially
kids.
by any today's
Yeah.
standard, what we know about children, it
Yeah.
was definitely abusive. I don't think she was being intentionally abusive.
No.
It's more a matter of, well, I'm doing what I was told, and I'm being
That's right.
told that. I mean, told this by a great sovereign of the universe. How could it possibly be wrong?
Yes.
You know, and this is what my friends who are parents are doing. So, and I say this because years later, my mom has had a chance to talk to me about that and tell me explicitly how wrong that was.
Oh.
So, she's giving a lot of thought, to this. And even me and my brother are 12 years apart. And my brother didn't get that same treatment. Even then, she was seeing, you know what, this I can't do this to my own children. And so she started walking it back.
We used to say, well, Joe was always in a leadership role, so he was in a congregation servant for years. Then he was presiding overseer and all of that stuff. So we had to be an example. That's the word, right? Example.
Yes. And
so,
that was what I was raised with.
Yeah. And in our case, half of the congregation thought we should not spank Lance. The other half thought we should spank him more. I mean, you couldn't please everybody with this issue. And to see an article so many years later from when we raised our children, or you were raised, and to see the criticism, not only on this kind of thing, but also the criticism on teaching kids how to view life itself and the blood doctrine and all on the so the human rights issue has reared its head.
Yes, and it is all violation of human rights. I think Watchtower is guilty of encouraging and facilitating enormous human rights violations. And I think when it's couched like that, so I give you another example that's close to that, is when I grew up, of course, knowing about disfellowshipping and marking, right? Mark on the forehead. And I was on New York City School Board that I served on for 7 years, and we're writing policy about bullying and social isolation. And all of a sudden it clicked. It says, wait a minute, this is what the witnesses teach and practice, is social isolation. When you put that label on it.
Oh my, yes.
When you put that label on it, see, they have a different code word. So people don't necessarily see the connection. But that action is illegal and is considered a violation of human rights. And if you're speaking on an international setting, an international criminal court, that's a crime. Yeah. And it's something that is wrong on a local level. Like, and everybody knows this. And when I talk to my colleagues about how social isolation is routinely practiced in certain places, it's hard for them even to compute that, because this is a rare thing, right, in their mind, but it's not for us, So.
Well, to see a religion do this, that's the difficult issue here. When in the privacy of people's homes, they do lots of things that maybe someone else didn't approve of it. But it's just like the shunning. You can shun someone you don't like them, or you get into a squabble with your neighbor so you don't talk to them anymore. But mandated, that's the thing.
Yes,
mandated shunning, mandated spanking. It was almost mandated. There was articles about they won't die. Take them. I've read looking back since the past few weeks, I've looked at some of the articles years ago.
Yeah, he will not die, even if you do beat him, and that's the scripture. And but you're right about the mandated shunning. That is it's the law for them.
Yeah.
And they're seem to be getting more rigid with it as the years have gone by.
Yes, they were, and since there's so much being said about it now, maybe they're rethinking it because they removed two videos from the Circuit Assembly.
Those videos were terrible. My gosh. But see how explicit those were. See, so they would always say, okay, you don't discuss spiritual matters with the person. So that's what they put formally on paper. But the mother who was calling the daughter in that video, you don't even know why she's calling, but it sounds like just a routine call. I want to talk to my kid. Was it going to be about something spiritual? The daughter didn't pick up, and it's presented that this is a good thing that she didn't pick up. I don't pick up on my mom's calls.
Yes,
so,
that is a good thing. That she's almost like the heroine of the video, you know.
Yeah, yeah. The sorrowful but faithful Christian that is bearing through a difficult time, but she's still not going to pick up those calls.
Yeah, but you supported it. I supported it, didn't we? I know I did. Maybe not to an extreme because we never really.
We did, but I always felt there was a problem with it, and so as an elder, you can talk to disfellowship people, just not a lot of social. Mm-hmm. So I took that loophole in my own conscience, and I would always at least say, "Hey, good evening." If they came to the hall, if I saw them on the street, I would say hi. Wouldn't go further than that. But I think back on it, that's probably the most humane thing that was done to them when they came into our Kingdom Hall. Was myself, maybe one or two other elders who would just greet, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, your mom was very rigid because she was such a believer back in those years. She really wasn't doing any of that out of lack of love or impatience. She just wanted the perfect little guy who served Jehovah.
Right. And she's trusting.
Yeah. And so now she's much older. Many of us, as we get older, we reflect back. How could we have done things better, different, or whatever? So how's she doing nowadays?
She's doing well. So she's very balanced in her thinking.
She's still a witness?
She's still a witness. Mm-hmm. She's still dedicated. She's still devout. But she thinks about her actions. So, of course, we're not having deep spiritual conversations. Mm-hmm. We're not talking about, we're not reading the Watchtower together.
Are you disfellowship?
No, I left. Mm-hmm. I left.
Did you disassociate yourself?
I did because I was forced to. Mm-hmm. Because basically I was an elder who was involved in thinking. I was an apostate causing divisions in their mind. I was waking up. That's what was happening. Mm-hmm. And so, but it's really hard as an elder to just fade away. That would have to be a long process that you do. And I was actually trying to move, and I didn't physically move fast enough into another neighborhood. And, you got a wife and kid, you can't just uproot just like that. And so they actually ambushed me, knowing my schedule, ambushed me on the way to work and told me they had the Judicial Committee hearing set up for this date and time. I could come. If not, they would do it again. And if I didn't come to the second, then I would be disfellowship in absentia. They gave me the charges. But then they said something interesting. They said, because, you had been such a good person, we have no problem with you personally. If you want to disassociate yourself, just write a letter and we'll accept that. What can they do anyway, right?
Right.
So I waited until the second judicial hearing after it was all over so that they could wait for me and go through the torture. I didn't show up. And then I wrote and I said, I texted and said, it's in your inbox. This is still 15 years ago, but we had gotten our congregation in on email pretty early adopters of the technology. And then I sent the letter to the whole congregation
How did you? Yeah,
as to why I was doing this.
Yeah, Joe did the same thing.
Really?
He did. After I think it was after the appeal hearing, he sent a letter to everybody in the congregation. It was very kind, a letter.
Right.
And he just tried to explain somewhat. And, the disfellowshipping and shunning is difficult, of course, to families, but it's interesting that more and more people are finding out that families can associate together, even if there is a disfellowshipped one. As long as they don't talk about spiritual things. It's in the elders' book, and but the elders and so many of the people who write this stuff don't talk about it. So for years, people assumed they couldn't talk to their own relatives, but they can. They can. Like your mom is talking, you have a lovely life because she respects the arrangement, and you respect.
Yeah, and you see, so they tried to keep her from auxiliary pioneering last year. She wondered why I put my application, why didn't I get anything, and so then she asked the elders, and they says, "Well, we need to talk to you in the back room." 2 elders got with her. They said a prayer, and then they explained to her, "Well, you keep this relationship with your son, and that's not exemplary. So we can't have you as pioneer." And her reply was, "Well, let's see, my son is the only kid I have that's going to take me to my doctor's appointments. My husband passed away. He can no longer drive me around. I have cataracts. I can't, just drive. I can't, I take the bus, but I have this disease, that disease. And he's helping me out. And so I need him. And if that's what it takes, well, Jehovah will see my hours, and that is what it is. And I can't do anything about it." And so then they left her alone.
See that, but they were in error doing that because they don't even read their own manual, elders.
Right, because they're manuals. But look at the videos that they're putting out that give the example.
Exactly. It's like sides of the tongue. That. This is why there's so much confusion about this. This is why so many people are so angry at Shunning, because they say their family won't talk to them anymore. And yet it's in their own manual that's not the way the Watchtower instructs. But they don't talk about it, what they put in the book, and then they encourage an opposite practice. You don't get that. See, that's why it's such a terrible violation of human rights. It's 2 messages.
Right, and that we have all these truth in communications and advertising and contracts. Right? You can't just say this is the contract and then in the fine print say the exact opposite. You can't do that. You can, but it's not legal. You can be sued for that.
Yes.
And they do it all the time.
Yes. That's a problem, isn't it? It's the practice. It isn't their rules and their practices collide.
Yes. Yeah.
In many, many instances.
Yeah. Everything they do, it's almost like, so in investing, this is hedging your bets. They hedge their bets on everything, just like they'll say the Armageddon is coming in the very near future, but then they'll also tell you plan for the future. And it confused people. Well, which is it, And then the overwhelming message they give culturally is Armageddon's around the corner. So now people won't buy a house, or they won't, get a good job, or won't go to school, But then they'll still leave the disclaimer somewhere written in writing that, going to college is to up your conscience. But then they'll tell you, but here's a person with a Bible-trained conscience, and they quit medical school. So what are you saying?
Isn't that the truth?
And so they everything they do is funny, because we could think about that scripture where Christ said, everything you do to be observed by men. Well, I think in terms of everything you do, in terms of to be observed by like the courts, like let's have the legal cover, but then let's go do what we want anyway. It just burns them because it's impossible to keep the lie for 200 years or however long they've been in play.
perhaps if they cared more, those who make the rules, those who interpret the scriptures, if they only cared more about their members, which they don't even use the word now, but cared more about the people instead of the rules and the organization and how it looks and whatever. And so over the years, just hundreds of thousands of people have been in this organization and out. And it's like, constant shuffle of people when they can't live up to this, and then they get out or they're ousted. And so for us to talk about this is good. And thank you for your insight into the matter. As an elder, for how long were you?
11 years.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Tell the folks the name of the congregation.
Astoria Congregation, Astoria English in Astoria, Queens, New York.
Mm-hmm. The reason I say that is because, or ask you that, is because at Bethel, many of the Bethelites were assigned over the years to your congregation. So you always were interacting with Bethelites. In fact, the congregation servant was, his name was Plumhoff at one time. That congregation servant early
Howard
on.
Plumhoff, before I got there, yes.
Yes. Yeah. And we actually knew him, and a very nice man, a kindly man, and he was in the service department. And
it's funny. When I did my work at Assembly Halls, the overseer that we had for the Brooklyn Assembly Hall renovation was a Alaskan missionary by the name of Charles Gaunt.
What was the last name?
Gaunt, Gaunt.
Okay.
And his son is probably still a witness, him and his wife. He was an Alaskan missionary, and his wife's name was Ada. And Charlie and Howard were rivals for Ada's affection back when she was single. And he told me he used to joke around. He says he would call him Prunehoff instead of Plumhoff. Why you want to go out with Prunehoff for?
Well,
there's a funny memory from way back when in the 80s when I met them.
The interaction you had with Bethel, and I was going through some papers. What we ought to do is tell the story of how you and Joe and I met. How you met us, and so your picture disappeared.
Don't worry, I did that. I'm just going to move only for family facilitation.
Okay.
I didn't want my showing the cam move. Sorry, but I like to keep a happy crew here, so I just don't want to hog a space. So let's see. Let's go back here. Should be good. Yeah, good.
Yeah, you're back.
Okay.
Okay. You used to post on a discussion board, and you post under the name Truth Set Me Free.
Oh yeah, Truth Sets One Free. That was my original handle on JWD when I was actually hiding my identity.
Yeah, you.
And I just kept it.
You really said some very interesting things in I don't know, is it 4 or 5 parts to that, and we could encourage people. We should put the links to those articles on the video.
Yes, and I put them also in a document I sent you.
Yeah.
Copy them in.
And so there were these Bethelites. It was constantly changing. They came to Bethel, and then after a few years, they left. But there were some in your group that stayed there for quite a number of years. And so when you got in touch with us, and I don't recall the year, but it was quite a while ago. And
it could easily have been 2004, 2003.
no, it was maybe a little later.
Maybe.
Um,
But I was still a witness at the time.
Yes, you were, because you were an elder.
Mm-hmm.
And you got in touch with us, and you told us that you wanted to come to visit, and and you would know us primarily from the discussion board or from Dateline, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what did you bring with you? That is really so fascinating.
So you, Barbara, I letting my daughter know I went downstairs. So you, Barbara, and Joe were pivotal. I was in the investigating stage of my waking up, and I wanted to talk to and meet the people who knew what was going on, and you were one of them. And so that's why I wrote you guys. I was so tickled. I went to see you guys when I was on a business trip out in the Midwest. Nobody knew in my family. No, I paid the ticket where no one could trace it. What do you do? And we didn't have the technology we have today. Like I have Life 360 where I can see the kids and they can see me. We didn't have that back then. So nobody knew I was in Tennessee, save for you guys. And I brought some at that time and sent you some later. Some very interesting documents. So I was involved with.
What were they doing at the Kingdom Hall? So that
right. This is it. I was involved with regional building committees, and I was involved with my own Kingdom Hall and our construction and our maintenance. I was the chair of our operating committee, so I was able to see all of our storage. And Astoria Kingdom Hall has been owned by Astoria congregation since the 50s. I mean, oh my goodness, his name is escaping me. The council, Watchtower's council back in the Rutherford days, Hayden Covington. I have his letters with his personal signature. If I haven't sent you those, I got to send them. Hayden Covington was in Jackson Heights congregation, same Kingdom Hall.
Mm-hmm.
That he was there. That was his hall. And so there was a lot of history. And so I was finding boxes of documents.
Weren't you remodeling?
We did a renovate. Actually, we did a complete rebuild.
Yeah.
And then because of Watchtower's inadequate building practices, we kept having floods in our lower auditorium. And so we kept having to do microbial abatements and so forth. So we had to keep moving our storage. So I had a chance to go into our storage. I think for a while I had some of that stuff at my own apartment because we did a complete knockdown of the original structure in 91, 92.
And so from my memory, you said that you were up in the attic and there was black trash bags up there, right?
Yeah. Wow, you're remembering, yeah.
And you open. Oh, that's the one thing that the Watchtower doesn't like about me. I'm like that elephant, If I'm interested, I never forget. And so
right.
I never have forgotten where you went to the details. I remember you sitting in the chair in our living room, and
that's right.
Telling about what you found.
Yeah, and then all of that stuff had been put up in the ceiling in the new Kingdom Hall. And I knew where all that stuff was.
So this was a disc. Most of it was when they cleaned out the files. So secretary
I brought it all home. I still have stuff in my attic in this house.
No kidding. Who knows what you got?
I may still have something up there. This guy has underneath of it.
What you gave us was such an interesting reading, but it was one thing that was so interesting. I hate that word. I got to find another fascinating, whatever. Anyway, there was
ChatGPT is good for that.
There was a appointment. There was a whole file of over the years when they would appoint someone to a position.
Right.
And so I go through that to see how many people were still at Bethel years later, because we were in Bethel in the 80s and the early 90s. So as I go through this, who do we find? Let's see. I don't know what I did with it. It was.
I remember a case.
Yeah, but beside the case, don't get to that because I want to tell you who was there.
Okay.
It was my husband's roommate.
Yes, right. You told me that. Yes.
Yeah, he was in your congregation, and here was the letter of appointment, and it's a long letter. I mean, it wasn't like today where they just mark something, and put a name, and talked about him or whatever. Well, he's still around and lives in Washington State, and called Joe I think it was last year, and a lot of water has passed under the bridge from the 50s. This was in around 56. That's how, telling the folks here, that's how old some of this paperwork that you had. They, instead of burning it, they were putting it up in the attic and the ceiling or whatever. And so he called and he wanted to know if how Joe felt about the organization. Well, Joe told him, and then he was hopeful Joe would come back. But in effect, he's been shunning Joe and me for all these years, 20 years. And like I say, a lot of water has passed under the bridge. He's now a widower, and I think one child is a witness, and then one child isn't. And well, they're all adults now, and could be a great grandfather, for that matter. But you never think of the future when you're involved in all this. But the future is here, and you look back, and you say,
I was very fortunate to have some elders in our congregation that allowed me to think about the future just a little bit. I mean, honorable mention goes to Don Stripling.
Oh, wonderful man, wonderful.
Yeah, because he Don. What you mentioned about them not caring about their members, a lot of it I think is because they didn't have lives beforehand. Don raised a family, and he had a job, and he retired and came to Bethel. Basically,
he was an electrical engineer in engineering where I was at the time.
Yeah.
I got to tell you something you don't know. I'm glad we brought this up because his Stripling's daughter married in Bethel. Terry. And they were in Bethel for over 20 to 30 years, and they were asked to leave.
When you told me that about Kevin, and Kevin is a dear friend, and Terry, my goodness, you know how loyal, just how loyal they were and how valuable they were.
His job, they didn't need him for a job.
And that's amazing because he was running the convention office.
That's right.
And wow, but I guess because they don't use public venues so much anymore, they use their own stuff, But, he would tell me how they was having a harder time renting these venues because of the problems Watchtower was having back then with reputational because of, the pedophile issue, first and foremost. So it's a headline risk, you're going to have, are they going to be the next child abuse of somebody famous comes out, and then we just rented our building to them. So they just didn't want it, So.
Most sad because here they are up in their 50s or 60s and have 60s. To effectively, 60s, have to start over. I think what are they, like 2 years ago this happened, or 3 that they were asked to leave. So many of the ones that were so faithful, serving, that's why I say it's the people that are overlooked. And
yes,
I know that many get a little allowance until they can get on their feet. I don't know enough about that, but the allowance has gone up for those that, as it gets more expensive to live out there. So
See,
Uh,
and that was another part of my wake up, because like you mentioned, we had so many Bethelites, and not just brothers. We had a lot of single sisters too. But in the early 2000s, a lot of them were leaving. They were not leaving the truth. I'm using this in the context of being a Jehovah's
yes.
Witness.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't leaving the truth. They were leaving Bethel. And some of them would tell me why. And they were very forthright. And most of them had skills, law, construction. This. And they says, you know what? We've already lost $1 million in total by going to Bethel. If we stay, what if the whole thing, collapses around us and we're asked to leave 20 years from now? We want to go now and make sure that we can support ourselves, that we can survive out there. Those survivors fiscally, right? They could see the handwriting on the wall, but they weren't leaving doctrinally. They were devout Jehovah's Witnesses, but they all went and got good jobs. A lot of the ones that left my congregation, but it was a wake up. It was telling me what people like Barbara and people on JW.net and all these other places were saying was largely true, and they weren't apostate liars like they were trying to make them out to be. Watchtower was trying to make them out to be,
Wow.
So yeah.
Well, most of us don't care really about what you want to believe. I mean, we tried to convert people because we thought that Armageddon was coming and they're going to miss out on living forever. But overall, we respected other people's beliefs as individuals. Maybe Rutherford didn't, or people like that. But
Right.
generally speaking, the average witness wasn't too hard nailed over this issue. But the people that came and went at Bethel, the turnover was tremendous. The one man at Bethel in the writing department gave me a figure of 85% of the young men every year. Now, this is
Wow.
while I was there, and that's a long time ago, and he said this to me.
I do remember as a kid, I didn't grow up in a Astoria congregation. I grew up in an inner city congregation called Evergreen, which has been dissolved for 15, 16 years now, maybe longer. But as a kid, because my mom would always make sure to invite the Bethelites over, I was always aware that we were always getting new Bethelites.
Mm-hmm.
But we never, it's not like we kept getting new Bethelites and we had 100 of them. They would leave 2 years down the road, they were gone, and then we get another 2, and then we'd have them over for dinner. It's countless how many Bethelites we had. So they were turning over in the 70s.
Mm-hmm. So they were training them, and then the people would leave. Now, in some of the paperwork, there was a list of everybody in the circuit number that your congregation was in. So there's lists of all of the servant body in congregations. I forgot what a circuit was, 19 or something like that.
15A.
Oh, okay.
15 in general, 15.
I was close.
Oh, yeah, you're in the team.
And I saw the name Howard Zenke.
Yes.
Yes. Very, very fine man to deal with. I mean, as an individual, these were fine people, and they were believers. They would give their life to the witnesses, Yeah. And he was, at one point, he was in the service department, and he told Joe and I one time that, I don't know how we got on it, but he said he asked to be changed from the service department, and he was in I don't know, electrical or something. He was in a department of manual stuff, not head stuff. Well, I shouldn't say that because it takes both. But he said there was too much interaction on personal lives in the service department that he wanted no part of.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's funny what comes across, because I remember Howard Zenke with his public talks of being very down to earth in the way he spoke. Yeah. In fact, one time he sang a few bars of a song because it made a point that he was trying to make. Like, he was just unassuming, not self-assuming.
Yes.
That's the impression, even from on a platform that you would get of him. So that would be something he could say. I could see that.
Yeah.
too
Yeah,
much
and he,
involvement in personal lives. Wow.
yeah, and you really have to give him credit for doing that, because being in the service department and legal and writing, those are, look, people would die for it. That's what one
Yes.
person said to me when I came into writing. He said, "Don't you know that you should appreciate being here?" He said,
Oh my
"There are
goodness. Yeah.
Bethelites here that would kill," he said, "kill to get in these departments." And I
Yes.
laughed. He said, "Don't laugh. I'm serious." And I thought,
Yeah.
oh my,
I knew that and I wasn't in Bethel.
yeah.
I knew that was a
So,
decision of prestige.
you know, what's in the literature is so different than the reality. And so it paints a picture for people who are like your mom. I'm using you as an example because I can't think of anybody else that in your life who is such a believer. And so they believed every single thing in the literature. We did too. But the reality isn't quite what the literature said that the organization was like.
Right.
Yeah.
It's almost like seeing a fairy tale, you know, on TV or at the movies, but then believing that's real life. And that's
Yes,
what
exactly.
is happening.
And we didn't know any better until you get to Bethel or all the other statistic that one person gave me. That was Cyril Alessino, and you know him.
Yeah, good man.
And he said to me that he gave me the actual figure, and that was in let's see, that would be around 1990. And he said of those that come to Bethel, the figure was about 80%, somewhere in there, of those who come to Bethel leave the organization. So
that leave, interesting.
That leave the organization, yeah. He said,
and I became an elder, and this led to the
yeah.
to my leaving.
So you see the reality.
Yeah.
And of course, people who are not witnesses see reality all the time. It doesn't stumble them.
Right. I don't quit my job because
life is life, you know. So, but here you have expectations that are not realistic, and they're put in your head through the Bible study and the dreams of all of us. When we taught other people, we kind of, accentuate the dream about this future and all of that.
Yes.
And now the literature doesn't do that anymore. In fact, there was a quote someone pointed out just recently in the I think it's January Awake, quoting Fred Franz, a statement he made. I'm trying to think what year it was that he made it, and I can't. Anyway, he makes a statement that we should be appreciative of the hope that we have set before us and never give up, even if it takes 1,000,000 years to come.
It's going to take that long, probably longer. If it comes, it's going to be Satan's system that brings it, not Watchtower.
But to put that in the coming Watchtower, I think they're telling everybody, hey, and of course the words used for the assemblies had to do with patience. Have patience. So
yeah, exercise patience.
Things happen,
Yeah, I saw they were doing some interesting publicizing. I looked at different convention pieces that were done by the press, the media, and it sounds like the Public Information Department, is that what it's called now?
It.
PID.
PID.
Yeah.
PID
was billing it as a convention where, and this is partially true, I'm sure, where you would learn things about patience, just in life, But of course, we know that the hidden message is patience, waiting for the end, even if it should delay,
1,000,000 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess Freddie was becoming a facing reality in that he was going to go. I wish I could remember that date. Well, anyway, the paperwork that I found so interesting that you brought here. I have actually shared some of this, especially the material on disfellowshipping of different people. The correspondence between Plumhoff as congregation servant and the service department, which he was part of. So was he writing to himself? You know, like I said.
I guess in his capacity as an elder in the local congregation.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. Well, that's in 1960. Some of this stuff goes back, you know.
Oh, but there was some stuff there related to child abuse too.
Oh, absolutely. Got him in front of me. There's a disfellowship. I have a. Let's see. So this is the letter.
Cable Watchtower.
Yeah. Here is the card, and it's a disfellowshipping. It's a card for. It's an SCD-SSE card for disfellowshipping, right. And so this had to. It says August 23rd, 1948. This is a really old one.
My mom was 3 years old. Wow.
I don't even want to say how old I was, you know. So it's the advising the Astoria unit. Yeah, remember that?
Right.
That's what they called them. Disfellowship the following person on August 23rd, 1948. And his name is written here. His name is Edward, but we won't tell about his last name. And so the letter comes to Howard Plumhoff, of course. He's the congregation servant. This is before the elders' arrangement. And it says, Dear Brother Plumhoff, in checking our files, we observed that we never did make a registration of the fact that Edward was disfellowshipped back in 1948. So we are sending you this card now. This letter is 1970. They're going way back because they needed to update their files. If anybody says Watchtower denies that Watchtower keeps records on all of us, or did, listen.
They keep records on everything. And everyone who's an elder knows this, because if someone is disfellowshipped, you have a 3-man committee usually, and there's a form. You fill out that form, check what the offense was. You could also write in other and brief explanation, and then the 3 of you sign it. That's just a standard form. You send it off.
Yeah.
In the city here, we do it with Bethel mail. We wouldn't send it U.S. mail. If you sent it U.S. mail, and even if you sent it Bethel mail, you would send it in, I think it was a blue envelope. So they knew the blue envelope.
Blue envelope was for all disfellowshipped information on people. It's good to bring that out, because some people, I think that the blue envelopes only contain child abuse information.
Yeah, no, and if someone's disfellowshipped, you send it in a blue envelope. Yep.
That's that just got the blue envelopes and dealt with the disfellowshipped records.
Right.
So he says here, so they never registered the fact that he was disfellowshipped in 48. He said so the letter says, so we're sending you this card now, even though the action was taken a long time ago. He was disfellowshipped for consorting with a woman other than his wife.
But I think that what might have been the case where he was accused by a minor.
No, that's another one.
Oh, that was another one. Okay.
I'm going to get to that one. Yeah, this is like a soap opera.
Yeah.
I shouldn't laugh, but it's a long time ago, and there's so much water went under the bridge, and you gotta laugh.
It's people stuff, right? I mean, they're probably all passed on by now.
Oh,
all those names here.
Sure. Oh, yes, some of them had
children might be around, but
yeah. So this was him consorting with a woman other than his wife, and have her name here, and we do not know what the outcome of this matter is.
For an organization that didn't have the records on the guy, they still have all of that to put in a letter.
Yeah, 22 years later, they wanted to know what was going on here. And it says, what was the outcome of the matter? Even we need to know whether he has ever sought reinstatement or has ever associated with the organization since that time. In any event, this will make our files complete. Oh, that's really what they need, complete files, right? Yeah. Their files are never complete.
We can always put a little more information in.
You know, because the phones in the service department keep ringing, the circuit overseer keeps reporting, And
because they wanted to keep control. What if this person decides to come back into congregation, have a Bible study, get baptized, and start all over again? There has to be a central database. In some ways we like this. We have
yes,
no-fly
yes,
lists, right? We know,
yes.
speaking as a nation, right?
No,
This
you're
is
right.
not the end of the world, but it's used. You have to be a high-level offender to get to that level.
It's true.
You have to be convicted of a crime
Yeah.
to get to that level.
Well, if this was in
Where the
Puritan
government's
times,
tracking
if this was back in hundreds and hundreds of years, it would be different. But it isn't. And
Yeah.
people even in this time in the 70s or in 1948, people look differently at divorce and consorting with another person, not their wife. This wasn't a crime. It was a crime. What? In purity.
Right.
So
And this can be slander, in the right hands. If that letter leaks out, I got it. So
yeah. And here's one that I found fascinating. This one was a long. Look at this one. That's a lot of typing here, and that's just page 1. And this one comes from, of all people, you can't make this stuff up. This one comes from N.H. Knorr.
Ain't that amazing? Knorr was involved with so much personal correspondence. Some of those are signed in blue ink, which copiers back then would not copy that. He hand signed some of these letters.
That's right, blue
that
ink.
We
That's what's
have
signed
in hand.
And this one is about someone at Bethel. His first name is David, and he is saying that talking about the congregation committee, and he was behind their decision to recommend the removal of David of Bethel as congregation book study in the Astoria congregation. So as conduct unbecoming a Christian. Remember that?
Yes, that was
I don't
the standard
say that
line
anymore.
Yep, when I grew up, that's what you would hear. This person has been disfellowshipped for conduct unbecoming a Christian.
That's
that was
right.
What you're supposed to say.
And they stopped doing it because of lawsuits. Okay?
Makes sense.
And then the word disfellowshipping, they stopped using it when they announced someone being disfellowshipped. They just say he's no longer
a witness. That's why you can't tell disassociation from disfellowshipping.
Yeah, I know. I was involved. I know what I'm talking about. It was because of lawsuits. So you never used the word disfellowshipping and connected that up. Because it's slander.
Right.
People's lives were affected. So, but listen to this one. He says, all 3 members are in agreement that David be placed on an announced probation because of his unchristian conduct for breaking an engagement to marry, okay, and for toying with sexual immorality. Well, when Knorr sent this letter, he should have been ashamed of himself putting that down there. Maybe toying with sexual immorality was unchristian conduct, of course. They viewed it at that. But for breaking an engagement to marry, when Knorr broke his engagement,
I didn't know he had broke. Was it with Audrey or with another woman?
Another woman. It was the woman who became the wife of the guy that jumped out of the building.
Richard Wheelock?
Richard Wheelock. She was engaged to Knorr.
Michelle. So, the connection there, Richard Wheelock married my parents.
No.
My mom was close with that couple, and she was shocked when I told her, maybe a year ago, and I showed her the newspaper article of what had happened. My mom was in his congregation. She came into the truth in Times Square congregation in Manhattan. Wow,
well,
that's
we called Michelle Mike.
Wow.
Mike. Bourgeois. That was her maiden name.
Okay.
And Nora and she were engaged until Audrey came into Bethel. Her brother, fleshly brother, was, I think, in, sheet metal shop. And so his sister wanted to come to Bethel. Of course, through the brother, it was easier. It was hard for women to get into Bethel.
Oh,
if they
right,
didn't have an
yes.
opening for cleaning, for someone in the cleaning department, you couldn't get in. Well, Audrey got in. I've been told this now. So, and the people that told me about the engagement, they were 100% right on. And so Richard
That's
Wheelock, and
amazing.
I shouldn't say I forget his name, because that was Joe's overseer in the press room, is Richard Wheelock. And Richard
Right,
Wheelock
that's
was
where he was.
responsible for Joe and I to come to Bethel. He's the
That's
one.
so.
Absolutely. We were having lunch when our son was at Bethel a year. We were visiting, and then we saw Richard and Mike, and so Joe started talking to him, and I was talking to Mike, or Michelle, and so Joe was kidding, and he said, and Joe was 48, I think, then, and he said, "You don't need old people here." And Richard said, "What do you do?" He said, "Well, I'm a plumber." And he said, "Just a minute." And then he leaves Joe, said, "Don't go away." And he goes to the phone, we didn't have the cell phone. So he goes to the phone and he calls up the service department to find out Joe what's doing in the past 20 or so years, from being at Bethel back in the 50s.
And there's the records.
Yeah, the long record. And so he saw that Joe was pioneering on and off for years, and he was congregation servant, then presiding overseer, and it goes on and on and on. Everybody knows that. And then so he comes back to Joe and he says, "I made appointments with Don Underwood, which was a man over the worldwide building work,
Construction, yeah.
and Larson, and
Max, right?
Max Larson." So that we spent the afternoon with them. Well, Joe come over to me, and he says, "Oh, we're not going to leave. We were going to come back to Tennessee that afternoon. We were driving." And he said, we can't leave. He said, "We got some appointments." I said, "What for?" And he said, "Well," he said, that, they want to look at, they looked at my record. Now they want us to have interviews. I said, "For what?" He said, "For coming into Bethel." And I was so shocked, absolutely shocked. I never dreamed that would happen. And so we had our interviews. I've never really gone into the details of our interviews. They were very, very interesting. And I'll never forget them. And so that's that. But the backing up, see, so Richard Wheelock, after Nora broke his engagement, and Richard Wheelock had been in love with Michelle, but she never wanted to date him. But then later, she agreed, and they married, and they were very happy until she died. It was through an accident.
My mom adored him. I knew him as a kid a little bit. I always saw him as a very kindly, gentle person. That's
Very
how he
gentle.
came across.
Mm-hmm.
And but that's terrible, the engagement thing, because I think about how many bad marriages, people who might not have married had they not felt pressured. And I put that in one of my writings. One of my chapters was about that. It was something about you don't have to see stars and fireworks. I think that's the title of it. And it was the notion that, well, you didn't have to be in love with a person so much. You could grow to love them. But especially as a brother, and especially if you're a ministerial servant, you did not want to be seen as what they call playing the field. So you can't date, 10 sisters. Not going to happen. Not if you want to keep your position.
Well,
that was known. And so here it is a formal letter where somebody is put on probation, and an announcement is made, possibly.
Well,
even if it was silent probation, it's still, they knew what people would know.
In this case, they did a real in-depth investigation into this courtship, and blow by blow, each paragraph is.
Yeah, and you see, even if he wasn't kind to her, or whatever, that's their personal business.
Yeah.
Leave that alone.
Here
Wow.
it says, Norris says that to Howard Plumhoff, in another letter, he said David was dismissed as a member of the Bethel family, and he says, we appreciate very much the committee's investigation of the entire matter and the full report that has been provided for the office of the president. See, just like you said, a copy of your letter has been sent to the service office. David is not a fit person to be associated with the Bethel family. The probation will also be announced to the Bethel family. It is a shame that members of this family conduct themselves in this manner. When they do such things, they have to take the consequences. Like, this was so horrible. And when you're young and you've got on the wrong side of the authorities, so to speak, you think your life is over.
Wonder where that guy is today.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll call in to Rick in a little bit. 1970.
We know where Nora is today, and it ain't heaven. Oh, no, I shouldn't say that. It's religious. I don't want to get into anything religious.
Well, we know he's buried down there in Kingdom Farm or somewhere, right?
Well, that's true. Yeah, we can. Everybody can visit. That's open to the public. If he leaves, the way the sisters in the congregation, it's good that he's leaving, that the public announcement is being made. Well, that's also bad, a public announcement.
That's terrible, in front of the Bethel family and his congregation.
This way, the sisters in the congregation will know what type of person he is, and they can protect themselves from him.
Blacklist him.
They didn't report child abuse, and that's some of the letters here. And yet this guy, his life is like not worth a nickel.
That actually gets very serious. If what you said there, you can't report child abuse. You cover that up, but somebody breaks an engagement and you tell the world. Yeah, that's sick.
And I mean, it's only when you really look at this closely do you realize that Zenke was right. When Zenke left the service department over this kind of stuff, it's because he was a thinker and a man of kindness, and realized this is going overboard. And we were part of this and did not know.
We didn't know. Yeah. Now
we got one here, application of pioneering, and this is Michael P. And he says, the society has, this comes from Watchtower, the service department. The society is at hand, the application for regular pioneer service your brother sent us for Michael. In checking your comments on this brother, we note that you did not recommend him for the pioneer service because of his personal behavior not being proper. You say you discussed this with him and no disciplinary action was taken. Just exactly what is involved with this brother? What did he do? We would like to have more information on this matter so we can properly handle this application. Thank you for your kind cooperation in this regard. I would think that Howard Plumhoff went, oh my God. Yeah, he said,
now I gotta go check this out.
So I've attached some of the results here about this Michael. And it says the congregation committee met with Michael and discussed the matter of misconduct on his part with a sister in the Jackson Heights unit. Wow.
Right, that's where Howard was.
He remained overnight in her home on several occasions. The sister, Dolores, with whom he stayed, also is being disciplined by the Jackson Heights unit. They both there was a mistake there. They both convinced us that no immorality was committed, but for reasons to believe that immorality was committed, the both of them are being placed in probation. At our first discussion, not all the facts were brought out. That was the reason for making the comments on the application. Later, more facts were called to our attention, warning, another hearing. Oh, they would follow this through like a lawyer would for a lawsuit or something, right? And so then Michael was next letter. He was put on probation for conduct unbecoming a Christian for at least a full year, and then they quote scriptures, and they talk that all brothers must be upbuilding, and so they're actually what they're doing is they're witnessing, and it's the three on the committee that signed this. They're witnessing to each other. You know, they already know all this, but they got to put it in.
Yeah, it had to get formal with it.
Yeah. And so then the probation took place, and then the disfellowshipping took place. So he deliberately continues to violate Bible principles and laws after receiving counsel. And so he violated his probation, and he was disfellowshipped. They go into the details. So on
probably violated his probation by going back to her house.
he lied to the overseer of the congregation. Now, you know what? We don't want to make light of the fact that this man wasn't the greatest, I don't know, morality or something, because he knew what the standards of the organization are, and he didn't follow them. And he says he continually speaks to young men and brothers in the congregation about sex and his sex affairs in the past, and does so in a rather boastful manner. Well, this guy should know better.
But see, this is the thing, though. They're policing these relatively small offenses, but then the huge ones, they're just like, what? You know, and it shows their detailed record keeping for minor things.
Yes. Here we've got a Harry. Harry was put on probation, and 1970 for indecent exposure of his sexual parts before Shelley, the 15-year-old daughter of his wife.
Right? Yeah, that was, I think, the one. That was a big eye-opener for me, because here it is, and this wasn't the only case I found in talking and investigating among witnesses in those years. Here it is, we have Barbara Anderson and others saying pedophilia is rampant throughout the organization. And I go on the roof of the ceiling of my Kingdom Hall, and I open two boxes, and there's a case right there coming from the 50s. And then I start talking to people, and it's nonstop. So again, what the apostates, quote, air quotes there, are saying is true. And it's not hard. I don't have to look far to find it. That was an eye-opener for me. That letter.
And what was fascinating about this one and another one was that they didn't take action against what he did.
No.
And we talked to him, and he understands and whatever. And then there's the next letters that he did it again.
Mm-hmm.
And on September 27th, 1970, this fellow, Harry, his conduct was unbecoming a Christian toward a minor-age daughter of a sister in the Astoria congregation. So they did nothing but counsel him for the first thing, just like that they have done for years and years and years with people who do something and who say, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. They go on to harm the next one, and that's what I've contended for years. You can't prevent the first one, but you could prevent the second one if you go to the law. And then if they don't do anything, it's their responsibility. You at least did the right thing in the matter.
I seem to remember in one of those cases, they actually used the two different in sexual abuse with two different people into the two witness rule to kick the guy out.
Yes.
Which I found. See, there's this, I don't want to say misconception, as a conception is born out of reality, where they will not disfellowship someone unless it was two witnesses to the same crime with the same person, and this is what keeps pedophiles in business in the witnesses. But the reality is that Howard Plumoff, somebody in the service department, knew that they could do it another way, and that case proves it. And that one, to
Yes.
me, just showed how mealy-mouthed they are and how they could have fixed this problem a long time ago.
Yes,
They
someone.
already had the solution, one of the solutions in hand. You have two different people accuse this person of the same thing.
See, they
Well,
wanted
there
to
you go.
help
There's your
him.
two witnesses.
See, in this letter, they got all these paragraphs, and they're like 1, 2, 3, and 4. So, but on the fourth, when it says, "It is the earnest desire of this committee to help Harry Pappas to develop the fruits of God's Spirit." So that's the way they looked at it. But
Yeah.
when Plumhoff wrote the service department about the second instance, he said it the way it was supposed to be. He says his actions and behavior were demoralizing and those of a sex pervert. That's
And
what Plumhoff wrote.
Right. And Plumoff, and they did the right thing and got rid of the guy. But why couldn't Watchtower just adopt it? Howard Plumoff was no small person. He was someone respected. Listen to him.
Yeah. Instead of reporting it to the authorities, at the hearing before 5 witnesses in the congregation committee, Harry had no defense and had to finally admit his conduct was shameful, embarrassing, and demoralizing to a young girl. No, yes, and unlawful.
Yes.
Even though it was 1970 and this was really blossoming out with the women's lib movement, and they was beginning to take a second look at the dirty little secrets that young people, especially young women, were going through. And but what shocked me about talking to one of the lawyers that handled JW cases. So after I was on Dateline, there was a law firm that responded to people calling up about what happened to them, and that one of the lawyers there told me that in the first few weeks, I think she said week, but it's such a long time ago there, but I think it was the first week, they had like 2,000 telephone calls about people who saw the program and claimed that they were abused. And she told me that most of the abused people who called were men. I always thought that was in the organization.
I saw your interview with John Viney, and she mentioned that, and I'm like, really?
Yeah. And isn't that amazing? So, we repeat this and we repeat this because we have new listeners, and they should know that this was the case. And we can't undo it. And if you make some pretty bad mistakes that harm other people, how do you get this? How do you stop this? That is a problem even today. They make rules, and so many times those rules, like a person repenting in the organization before the committee, and they don't disfellowship him or don't even report it to the authorities, and that was going on just up to a few years ago.
Yeah, and as if the person can't act repentant, meaning as an actor, not be genuine.
That's right.
How are you going to know? And there are a lot of witnesses who are professionals, and this is where I was talking with the witness just yesterday that was telling me that these people they don't change.
No.
Like they know it professionally. If they're they're around medical field, for example, they know it because they see it. They just, especially when these are sisters, and the person I was talking to is a woman, they don't know the extent of what's going on behind closed doors in judicial committees, and they don't have any authority anyway. So
That's right.
You know, they just, whatever. It's easy for them to not look because there's nothing for them to see, really.
You speak
Unless
from
they're personally
experience.
affected.
You know, you speak from experience as an elder. And okay, so what you've been doing with your life since you left it? Because you told me that you're the architect of a fulfilling life, career, and family. So let's hear it.
You know, I was watching your piece with John Viney in September, and when he said that he had become a magistrate and a few other things that he was doing, I say, yeah, that's exactly what I did. You take the skills that you have, whatever it is that you get from being in this, and you turn it to something that you can use in the real world. I had the advantage that I was already employed. I already had a career, so that you know, I didn't have to start over entirely. You know, I just had to deal with my personal, you know, other things that I wanted to do. So actually, when I was I think the story is worth telling, and it's a little more deeply than I have in the past, in shorter interviews. Is while I was still a witness, I got heavily involved with the regional building committees. That gave a lot of flexibility in how you could maneuver your time, because you could. I wasn't a pioneer, but it was kind of a look the other way, that if you're doing 50 hours a month on construction projects, you're not going to do equivalent amount of time in field service. But I had a daughter, and I lived outside the congregation territory. And you know, witnesses, we have all kinds of prohibitions. You can't be a Boy Scout, you can't be a shop steward, you know, I guess so many things. But no one said anything about being involved with your kid's PTA. So I was able to be involved with my daughter's school, and I wasn't breaking any rules. This led to, and it was known, you know, I became PTA president. And being that Jehovah's Witnesses don't go to those things too much, they didn't know that I was leading the group and saluting the flag on one side of town, right, and then go to the other side of town and conduct the ministry school, you
Why
know, the next night.
would the letters have flown between Bethel and your congregation?
My goodness. But that allowed me to meet people. That allowed me to make friends that were not witnesses, and to see that volunteer spirit and that altruism exists all over the world. Jehovah's Witnesses don't have a monopoly on it. In fact, sometimes I started wondering if Jehovah's Witnesses even had it to any great degree, because they're doing good for their own people. Not, you know, when you help out in your kid's school, you don't think about the religion of those students. You don't think about their ethnicity. You don't think about people's age or health problems. They're people. That's all that matters. So this took me, when I left in 2007, then that took me into the school boards. And that's a level of politics. And so it's a place where you can speak, public speaking. You know, I like doing that. You can engage with people. You can be helpful.
Well, you have enough practice.
And I had practice. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, they gave me that. And that's what it's saying about taking your skill set and bringing it to something. They do what you know already, just do it somewhere else. That's one way of dealing with it. So there was actually, when I left the witnesses, in some ways it was a relief, because I was living two lives. I was an elder. I was managing construction projects. I had my job. I was working nights. I was, you know, sleeping when I could. I was raising my kid. So I was busy. I set up another life. So when I lost the witnesses, then the other life just kept going.
You've been pretty busy with helping others who have come out of former religions that were very, what would you call them? I wouldn't say dishonest, but hard.
Yeah. I started a group along with another gentleman. That story is interesting. It's called Formerly Fundamentalists, for anyone who's heard of it. It's a little dormant now. I would like to pick it up deeper in the future, in the near future. But the way it started was there was a missionary in South America that I think you spoke with, Barbara, and you referred him to me. And he was in New York. He had left missionary service, him and his wife, and we met up. He was already out, basically. Wasn't disfellowship, though. Out of that first conversation we had, he started a group on Meetup. Happy Ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, I think was the name of it.
How nice.
And he was public. Lance, right? So he went from that to Baruch College, got his master's in governmental affairs, got married, had a kid, moved to California. He was nonstop. Once he left, he used the group as a way to meet people. And then finally, when he was moving to California, he says, I can't keep this going anymore. Do you want it? So I says, yeah, I'll have fun with it. And I was out there as Happy XJWs or something of that nature on Meetup. And then a gentleman who's a judge here in New York State, an administrative law judge. This is all public information. He reached out to me. He says, I run a group called Off the Derek, which in Yiddish, derek means road. So we're off the road, we're off the path. And he says, I'm really interested in getting people together who are from other denominations, other groups, Muslim, Orthodox Jewish, political cults, all of us. And just like we have common cause. And that was a feeling I had too. So we met, we changed the name of the group to Formerly Religious. And we thought about that. We says, well, a lot of our people are still religious. But what is it that binds us together is fundamentalism, extremism. And so we changed it to Formerly Fundamentalists. So we got a lot of press. There's been video done about us here in New York. We had looked at making it formal with legal papers and so forth, and the pandemic hit, and our time is limited, and we don't have funding, so it's all volunteer. But I still would like to parlay that into something and evolve it a little bit more, But just that little endeavor, I know, has impacted thousands of people.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, and the press we've gotten and the events we've done.
So see, we can help. Our experiences can help others, even who are not affiliated or were not affiliated with Jehovah's Witnesses, but other groups that were also fanatical and harmful.
Yeah. Amish, Pentecostal, small Christian denominations. We partner up with the Society for Ethical Culture here in Manhattan, and we use them as a venue. And they have been around for over 100 years.
Wow!
And the Ethical Culture Society, they're called. And so that was, even though I was out already, that's still very therapeutic.
Of course.
When somebody, when a person who's from another group, say Muslim, ISIS had them, and our Muslim friends, some of them, we have to be very, very cautious to keep confidentiality,
Mm-hmm.
which is also why we stayed small.
Mm-hmm.
Because, for some of them, it's dangerous, to be outed. Like their lives, their physical lives. And so, but when they meet someone like me, and here it is, we went through some of the same stuff, it validates them. And then I'm validated,
Yes, isn't that
neat? So bad. It's the greatest thing to meet people who are not witnesses, who share the experience.
I did.
It's amazing.
When Katrina hit, I volunteered at the Red Cross. Well, the Watchtower really condemned at Bethel. They really are hard on the Red Cross. They don't like them.
Yeah,
and
crazy.
but I was out and of the religion, and I had so many years of talking to people like you that there was no difficulty talking to strangers, calling on the phone, helping people,
Right.
because I've been doing it for years for a different purpose.
We're good
And
at it.
so I got an award, and from the Red Cross, they had a dinner, and when they had the dinner, and I was going to get the reward, we had already had our plans, and we were in going to Florida that week. And we had our hotel and all our, so I couldn't be there. But I get a big envelope from the Red Cross, and with my big plaque and all that kind of thing. So my award was thanking me. But I was able to raise money for the victims who were here in our town. They brought them from way far away. There was rooms for them here in Tennessee, and so they brought 200 people. It was I have to agree with you, and I said this before. I've told some of these stories before, but I said the thing about it is it helped me as much as it helped others.
I can't wait to want to do disaster relief with Red Cross or Habitat for Humanities, because the construction skills, like I have had dreams of sneaking onto quick build site, just to do quick build.
Well, it's the camaraderie and
and fake that I'm a witness.
community.
I'm like, but this is done, right? People do this. This is not a witness thing.
Yeah.
People do this.
Yeah, look at the Carter, the ex-president.
That's who I think of all the time.
Oh,
Jimmy Carter,
goodness.
Tilting up walls on a framing a house,
Yeah.
laying block, and he's 90 years old.
Yeah.
And I want to do that,
Yeah. We still have our dreams of being useful.
Yeah.
The happiest you can be is when you're useful. I'm useful by talking to you. I feel that your experiences help me. We repeat them and we help others.
That's
what
right.
we want to do is we don't want to get into other people's lives. We just want them to have a life.
Right.
Just because they leave this life, and even if you didn't have problems with the witnesses, it just didn't fit you. There's so many avenues of places for yourself, and don't give up and don't be depressed. And
that's interesting too, because I didn't have a bad time as a witness. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, me too.
But how do I reconcile, the fact, so many things about the teachings and the pedophile issue, and so all this stuff. A religion should not be in such control of your life.
No.
Like, stop it already. That's too much.
Not your personal life. The Catholic Church did that for centuries, and they found out it doesn't work. So
it doesn't work.
No. I want to, if I may, I got an email this past week, and from a woman in Canada, and her first name is Slavika. So I assume she's either Russian or Polish or something. I don't know. She doesn't say. She says, this is what she says to me, and I want listeners to hear this letter. She said, I'll be fast with it. I watched your interview, she says, a conversation with Barbara Anderson on YouTube. I love what you said in answer to how people can help. You said, become an advocate. Please encourage people to become advocates in shorter videos, because mine are always so long. Well, no, I have a few that are short. In a call to action, for example, Norway has opened a great opportunity for us to thank them and ask them to encourage other countries to do the same. All religions who violate human rights and fail to protect children and women by whatever failures do not deserve the status of religion, do not deserve tax exemptions and government funds, especially if they do not use those funds to help the needy in the countries who give them funds for charity work. 100% we agree.
Yeah.
And
Agreed.
Churches themselves take in billions in donations, and yet most children go to bed hungry, are abused sexually or physically, are exploited, and millions each year die of starvation. The Roman Catholic Church sits on billions in assets while children die of starvation and neglect and poverty and abuse of all kinds. The Jehovah's Witness organization also has assets in the billions while children die of starvation and neglect and poverty and abuse of all kinds. Are we not supposed to care for the widows and the orphans first? We have so many YouTube channels and Facebook groups helping XJWs, but no direction. XJWs no longer go in service to preach the good news, but what are we doing? Should we not unite? Should we not join on Zoom to share thoughts and ideas? I have asked to friend you on Facebook because I believe that Facebook can still benefit us, and it is still free, and Messenger gives us international free long distance. I'm from Canada, and I believe that you are from the U.S. I'd love to join you and be an advocate with yourself, and all wanting to work with the law and governments to fight child sexual and all child abuse. Of course, if we can bring the JW organization to account and hold them accountable for all their wrongdoing and crimes. Much love. Slavic. So isn't that a wonderful letter asking or discussing the needs?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. There's so much. It's funny she mentioned it. I didn't even think I wasn't going to mention this earlier, but it just popped into my head. I just got a book that I'm going to just show you here. I don't know if you've seen this, Barbara. Let me get my camera right.
Taking New Paths: Stories of Leaving Religion, Doug Matheson.
Yeah, I actually wrote a blurb for this book. He covers various religious backgrounds: Christians, Mormons, JWs, Orthodox Jews, Buddhists, Hindus, Sikhs, and everybody tells a little bit of their story. So the chapters. Back.
Mm-hmm.
And so
that's interesting.
Each chapter is written by a different person from a different faith. And Doug writes as well his Christian background. He's not a Jehovah's Witness. There's a lot of good stuff out there. You know, I liked his book, that anthology concept, because you leave cults when you see that groups that you know are cults, you believe them to be cults, act just like yours. And you say, wait a minute, they're like us. But no one's talking about you. No one's pointing a finger at you, so you can't get defensive. And so to the extent that we are stitched in, you know, and learning about other religions and other things, that can be very therapeutic. And I just saw that plug.
That's great. Say that name again. So
Doug Matheson. I like I said, it's the first time I actually wrote a blurb for a book.
Taking New Paths: Stories at Leaving Religion. Okay, so those who appreciate your, you give him a plus, A+.
Yeah. I like this book. I learned so much from reading the people's stories.
Good. And many XJWs do this. We're truly, there are those that we would like to assist who are newly out, and hope that they see that there is life after Jehovah's Witnesses. There's a life after Plymouth Brethren. There's life after.
There is life after witnesses.
All of these things. And so nowadays, you've said what you're doing, and you still work for a living, right? You haven't retired yet.
No.
And so you have you're remarried, and you have a wonderful wife. I met her.
Yeah, that's right. We spent that weekend.
Yes, and so the kids, there are kids around now, have been for a while, and they are practically all grown, right?
Yeah, they're all in college. Emily is working on doing her graduate work. Chris is about to graduate undergrad and BS in finance, and Julie is looking at veterinarian, possibly. You know, she still has to get into the program, but she's on the way. You know, loves animals. We just went to basically a wildlife rehab center out east on Long Island just last Saturday, a week ago, and she petted all these owls and interacted with foxes and bald eagles, and they actually rehab animals that are either found or donated that are either sick, or sometimes people buy exotic pets, and then those pets grow and then they don't know what to do with them, and so they'll donate them to the rehab center.
Yeah.
So that was a fullness. So I had a decision to make there, because I knew I would probably lose my oldest daughter because of the witnesses, and that's exactly what happened. And Raven is out there, and I miss her. I'm going to put that out there. More and more, I realize I need to just put that out there, because I don't know what she's watching and where she is in her journey. She's married now, but I got to let her know that contact me whenever you can.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to turn you away. It's that simple. You always love your children, and you never stop loving them.
No.
But I also knew that it would have been disastrous for me to make that my whole career. So I gladly remarried and got 3 new kids, stepkids, in need of a father, a young man in need of a dad, in the case of my son. And that has been the best thing, because so my wife knows enough about the witnesses. She has witnesses in her family,
Mm-hmm.
and she studied as a witness, but she didn't take to it.
She's a nurse. Is she a nurse? Is she a nurse?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Now she's doing her graduate work too, for Masters in Public Health Policy.
Oh, big.
So
Wow.
and she's working for the city of New York as a school nurse. And but the nice thing with her is she understands enough, but she's also a normal, regular citizen of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that would be beneficial for me. And then having my 3 new kids would also keep me busy, and a dog, as you can hear.
That's yours, huh?
Yeah. And so he gets to howling and crying when he's missing everybody. And then he'll quiet down.
I want to come in, Isaac and Barbara, at this time. We got about 10 minutes left, but there's people who would love to talk with you. Do you mind taking some phone calls, Isaac?
Oh, I'd love that.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. That's a good part of the program here. So if anyone would like to call into the program, let me put the number up here. We do have a number of people on our telephone line already, our radio network, we call it. But let me just put the telephone number up here as well. And just call in if you like, and ask Isaac a question. He was involved with the Regional Building Committee. And let's see what we got here. Let's ask Isaac a question. So go ahead and hit *6 if you're on with us. I'm going to start it off by asking you, Isaac, when you were on the regional building committee, did you ever have those people who wanted to work on a hall? I know even myself, I worked on them, but then they got really, really fussy. You had to, be getting certain time in. You had to be jumping through hoops. They just wouldn't take anyone. My father used to work on quick bills. He wasn't even a witness. My mother was. But, geez, he was a stonemason, and he would go and do the brickwork and masonry. He loved it. But then, of course, you couldn't do it. I forget what year they brought that out. But you couldn't do it because you had to qualify for it.
Right.
So what did you think of that? I'm just curious.
That's interesting. I saw a little bit of that, not too much. For the most part, anyone that I knew was on quick builds was a approved, publisher at the very least. But, there would be a place for having, if my the take I would have had as an overseer in my mind, may not have been able to act on it, would be that there's a place for having a volunteer who's not a witness. I mean, after all, you would pay the contractors to build it, and they wouldn't be witnesses. That would be an excellent chance to give a good witness. In fact, I can tell you that whenever we would have deliveries, concrete, let's say, delivered, and and the guy in the truck, I always made sure, especially when I was doing assembly halls, that driver got a nice plate of anything we were fixing on the inside, and they could come in, use the restroom, do whatever. So I think I would have been amenable to that. I think there would be a place for that, and people are going to be respectful. They're not going to light up a cigarette in the middle of a place like that. They're going to go outside. They do that anyway, right? So that would have been a really nice thing, to engage the community. That opportunity Watchtower missed, I'm sure.
Well, since I was involved inside and heard a lot of many changes were made because of lawsuits. That's the way.
Yeah.
Protect the Watchtower from getting sued, because things would happen on the grounds, and they would be liable. So
right, that would be. There's always going to some of that's always going to enter in. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
they're not.
They're
it's not much building anymore. I they're selling a lot, but they are building a few, because I know of one being built right now in Washington State.
Yeah.
So
there's still quick builds out there,
but not quick like
not
the
as quick as
weekend.
they used to be.
No, not the weekend deal.
Not the weekend.
Oh, the stories that we know on those things that I heard at Bethel, the negatives, so many negatives that the Watchtower got into. The local people, the local witnesses tried to help in times of tornadoes and things like that, when the other witnesses lost their house or whatever, and so they were. The Watchtower got involved in it because so many witnesses were helping one another. So then I can remember an announcement at Bethel at lunchtime where they mentioned a donation that was going out there from the society of over $80,000 to help people rebuild their houses and whatever.
Did the quick build concept start in New England? I want to say Massachusetts.
I think who would know, Rick, because he's from Massachusetts.
I had heard that it did start here in Massachusetts, but I could never really confirm it. But Massachusetts is a pretty pivotal state for the Watchtower. I mean, governor, well, not governor, I say governor, but a lot of them would come up here in vacation up in Massachusetts and New England.
Yeah.
Even Charles Hayes Russell would do that. He'd come out of New York, and basically he used to go up into the mountains of New Hampshire, and that's where he spent time. But I have heard that the quick builds actually started, which is kind of unique, in its own way. But my father, who never was a witness, like I say, he really always thought highly of the witnesses, because they would love bomb him. I mean, he'd go there and lay the brick and then love bomb him all the way till he went home, and he thought it was just what wonderful people.
Yeah.
But that's what they would do. Hey, let's open up those lines here. Why don't you say hello to Eric Carmignani? Am I saying that right, Carmignani?
Oh, Isaac Carmignani.
Isaac.
Yeah. What did I say, Summer? It's Isaac Carmignani. He's with us here tonight. Now, listen, he's an elder. He's seen a lot. I see there's people in the video suite. Evidently, I guess you're from the Queens, from what you said, Isaac, right?
Yeah, Queens, New York City, yep.
Yeah, so we do have people that on the video. We have a number of platforms we're on tonight, not just YouTube. You're probably seeing yourself there on YouTube, but we're on a number of Facebook groups, and also we have our own little private chat here, and people can see you as well. We call the suite. But there's a lot of people in there from New York. Why don't one of you folks from New York, maybe Shirley, why don't you call in? Do you know Isaac? Why don't you call in and say hello to him? He'd love to hear from you. Go ahead and call in right now. Say hello to Isaac. He's been involved with the Watchtower for many years. He's out of it now, but he's been involved now with the school board, I believe he said, and he finds that the witnesses wouldn't appreciate that. They would look at that as a political position of some type.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they would pick on anything they possibly could. Someone test the phone lines if you could. We should. Could somebody come in, please, and just let me know that the phone lines are working? That's the problem. Hit *6 on your telephone pad and come on and let me know the phone lines are working. For some reason, we're having some difficulty here with the people coming in, Isaac. Shirley, I'll go ahead. Okay, we do have. Oh, here we go. Okay, let's go. All right, let's bring Dick on. Dick, you're on with us. Dick, what do you want to say to Isaac?
Well, I'm glad he's on the show. That's for sure. I just wanted to let you know that the phone lines are clear, at least on the phone side.
Oh, very good. No, well, thank you, Dick. How about Apostle Babe? We got Linda James coming in. Apostle Babe. Linda, what do you think? You want to say something to Isaac here tonight? He came on Barbara's program. What would you like to say, Apostle Babe?
Okay, unmuted. Good. No, this is very fascinating listening to the two of them and the stories. And, I love the fact that he got involved in his child's school and, discovered that what he had already learned in the Watchtower could be used in other areas. So he already established a friendship or a social group of people, which is very helpful when we leave, to have a social community before we leave. That makes the exit much smoother. So, and I love the fact that somebody called out to him and they have some kind of meetup for former fundamentalists. This is huge. This is a very huge calling. Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for saying that. I think we need to get the strategies out there, in terms of how to deal with this. This is trauma for a lot of people, and but it's survivable.
It is. And there's some religions that are, pretty benign and not abusive. So there still needs to be respect for those that are believers. But to point out the techniques and tactics that cause trauma is super important. And, that's wonderful that you were involved in that. That's really a huge thing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're quite welcome.
Thank you, Apostle Babe, for coming on tonight. We do have Shirley. Now, Shirley is out of New York City. Do you know Isaac, Shirley? Come on, say hello.
No, I haven't. I see somebody, the guy signed in as St. Nick, or at least St. Nick posted a press release. I see you live in Corona.
Yes, I have a place there and a place on Long Island, too. So, yeah, I'm just north of Left Rack City over there.
I'm in the Jamaica area. Yeah, I just finished reading it, but I just noticed the part that said you're in Corona. So, were you in the Corona congregation? Is that your own, where you grew up?
I was west of Corona just a little bit in Astoria.
Okay. It said, I didn't finish reading it, but you're in the political world now?
Yeah, and, so right now I'm actually on one of our community boards in Queens, Community Board 4. Borough President Richards appointed me about in July. So that keeps me busy too. Yeah. So yeah, Queens issues. You're over there in Jamaica. So yeah, very much stitched into Queens issues, most definitely.
So when did you walk away? I came into the call early, so I don't know, you probably said it already, but when did you walk away and, go into politics?
Yeah, I walked away in 2007 officially. And by 2009, I was on our local school board. So, in the city, we have 32 of them that are local, and then one larger one that covers the whole city. And so I was on that smaller, covering Astoria, East Elmhurst, a little bit of Jackson Heights, a little bit of Corona, And I have friends. I have a good friend who comes out of Jamaica. At that very time, we met in the late 2000s, like 2009, 2010. That's now is your state assemblywoman, very possibly, if you're in Assembly District 29. Her name is Alicia Heineman. Her name is Alicia Heineman. Yeah.
Yes, I'm familiar with that name.
Yeah, she was initially appointed by Governor Cuomo when your assemblyman ran into some difficulties, and then she ran, and she's in the state assembly ever since. She crossed over, into elected office. Yeah, and that's just a number one. But she was a close friend. I campaigned with her. And so that's funny too, right? Because I was doing door-to-door work, except I was knocking on doors to endorse her. So I had plenty of practice.
For good reason that time. Yeah. So when you were like going to the meetings, did you have to hide your political interests? Is that what drove you away? Took you away?
So my interest, yes, but because I was working my daughter's PTA, there's nothing against that. So I didn't do the harder core stuff until I was out, So, but I was
Oh,
involved with my daughter's PTA, and it was known, But
yeah. Okay. So witnesses can't do PTAs. It always seems like can't do this, can't do that. Witnesses.
right. But there was nothing talking about the PTA, and I think it's because you're supposed to be involved with your child and their education.
Right.
So and these people at Bethel don't have kids, so they don't know that world. They don't know what it looks like to be able to prohibit it. So, I don't know if that's their reasoning, but that was,
Are you going to go higher, more political? Will you be mayor of the city one day?
I would love to. I would love to. The federal government has a law in place called the Hatch Act, and I just realized that because I'm a federal employee, that I'm barred for running for elective office. But by the same token, you can do it, but then you get sued. It gets complicated. But the answer is yes. I definitely have an interest in it. Yeah, most definitely.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm active in that space, trying to get there. Yep.
Oh.
So politics do work, huh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's actually a lot of good there,
Yeah, because we have so much negative, as a witness and even on the media, but you're involved in it and you think it's worthwhile.
Yeah.
What I see, Isaac, is you. I'm telling you, the Watchtower lost a good person when they lost you. No, you're articulate. Right. You're articulate. You present yourself well. I mean, I'm just noticing how you handle yourself. You can answer questions that are thrown out to you without hesitation. The Watchtower really lost a good person when they lost you. It's a shame. It's really a shame that the Watchtower doesn't wake up and smell the coffee. So many good people have left.
Oh, yeah. They bleed good people, and you see them succeed when they leave.
Yeah. Well,
there's so many success stories.
Barbara and Joe is a good example of that.
Yes.
Really, I'm a good example of that. I mean, seriously. There's so many people that have really, they will be able to help the Watchtower, but geez, they don't really offer any good feelings or any thoughts on how good you're doing. All they want to do is constantly condemn. Why does one want to belong to an organization like that? I can't believe it.
Right.
Yeah. It's condemnation, not commendation. That's the whole problem in the organization. And that's what I told the Awake editor. And I wasn't unhappy when I said that. I just said, because he was lamenting that so many were leaving. And it was in the 90s he was lamenting. And I said, well, maybe we ought to restructure the way we look at things. Instead of condemning everything, commend people and their works and so forth. And they tried a little bit. I noticed there were some articles, but there was always an ulterior motive behind it, because you'd find out later that there was a motive when they commended the United Nations, and then you found out later that they belonged to it.
It was a motive.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say that tonight's program really brought in a lot of listeners. We have we're close to 300 people listening in.
Oh, wow. Good. We lived a different life. I could never do this. Never have any idea about anything internally, but I lived it. And so why not share it with others? It wasn't all bad. There was wonderful people, like my husband said last week, wonderful JWs in our life. Yeah. And you go through that.
Babe, did you want to come in and boss the babe, say something? Go ahead, Linda.
I just wanted to add on to this. This gentleman's talking about being part of the PTA, and I often say, anything can become a cult, even the PTA. It depends on who the leadership is. But what I wanted to switch to is Head Start, the first 5. It's kind of like a preschool. It's called Head Start, and they have only parents make the decisions. They literally have make the decisions. My previous husband was on the board and became like the boss or the leadership of these volunteers that they literally made decisions. So that's another avenue to get another, to get a social group that's outside of the organization, and you're being part of your child's life. You're making this really effective.
That's a very good idea. Very good point. Oh my gosh. That's a very good point. I'm so glad you mentioned that.
Thank you.
Shirley, did you want to say something else? Shirley from New York, you want to say something else? Go ahead.
No, that's it. He answered my questions. Good. Someone near me. I was just amazed that, an ex-witness near me, and he's in the public eye.
Well, I want you to know, Shirley, you're not the
We're
only
all over the place, my dear.
Yes, no. He
It's
knows
a small world, huh?
Yeah.
well, he knows how to handle himself, and if he ran for congressman in
I'll
New York,
vote for you. I'll vote for you, Isaac.
I really do think that they need a new congressman from New York City. There's one that I'm particularly fond of, kind of a young woman. I won't say who, but surely would you
in her
vote?
district.
Yeah, my roots are New York City, Long Island. That's my roots too.
Well, she says she'd vote for you, Isaac. So I think that's important. You got a good way about you. Don't you ever change, Isaac. You're a good man, and you keep moving forward. Well, thank you for coming on Barbara's program today. That was really nice.
It was fun.
Thank you.
This was actual fun. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. If you notice, we talk to each other like we're in the same living room.
Yeah, because we do this.
Yeah. And,
so what we'll do is we'll give Isaac, and then we'll give Barbara. Barbara, you give the last words, and then we'll give Isaac.
I don't need to say the right. People are sick of listening to me.
You
have the last word.
Isaac. Let's give you had a lot of people listening in here tonight.
Wait. Let me tell you. In 2 weeks, we're going to have another guest who Isaac knows from New York.
Oh,
City.
yeah.
And it is a story and a half. He was a leading elder. He's a professional musician. He had interactions constantly with Bethel over helping in Bethel, helping with.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the digital world, and he's going to be here, and we're going to see his music, and
come back. So he's an excellent example of that you can live a good life after Watchtower. He is playing music all over the Long Island, New York City area. He invites me to his gigs all the time.
Yeah,
he's good. A lot of times I can't make it because of family stuff, but
we're going to play some of the video. Pieces from different gigs.
Yeah. Well, I'm really looking forward to that. As I was telling Barbara this week, Isaac, we're going to have a ex-Jehovah's Witness convention coming up in 2025. So people have 2 years to plan for it. It will be the first of its kind. And so I'm looking forward to this, man, because we're going to have some ex-Jehovah's Witness bands come in. We're putting this all together now. So we'll really have a really good time. So I'm looking forward to the program next week. But
amazing.
In fact, I got so many calls already. I put it out that I went down to this protest in Washington, D.C. on Halloween Day, and there was over 200 people that showed up. It really impressed me. And then at the end of the protest, everyone was hugging and shaking hands. It was unbelievable, just like in the witness world. So I'm thinking, gee, maybe there's a lot of people that would love to come to a convention, maybe not a protest, but a convention. So I'm putting that all together now. I've been talking to some convention centers, and I'll know in the next week or so where we're going to have it. But I believe there's so many people right now willing to say, that's it, I'm coming. So that's a great. So Isaac, what would you like to say? What's your final words here tonight? We want to hear from you.
I think I'd like to conclude with the thought that there is, as we've said several times, there is life after the witnesses. I was scared. Look, I was scared when I was making these choices to leave. I had friends to help me, both in the witnesses and not witnesses, because you're terrified. What's going to happen when I stop attending meetings? Maybe the pandemic has changed that for some. But in my day, that was terrifying. It was terrifying to talk to worldly people, even though I was doing it. because they were, what are we brought up to think, the kind of people they are. So all of that was scary. But I did have people tell me that there's life after the witnesses. I saw the discussion boards that we had back then. I lurked around, I read, and then when I finally took the plunge, I found that it's true. It's true. You can recover from this stuff. It's always with you. Scars remain, but I'm just saying that that life doesn't end because you leave. It begins when you leave.
Mm-hmm.
Well, very, very, very good comments, Isaac. Thank you very much for coming on tonight. Thank you, Barbara. Barbara, you keep cranking away at it. You're doing a great job. Thank you very much.
Well, these are all my friends from the witness world, the good people, and there's plenty of them out there. We had a past that's over, but we'll never forget it.
Right.
Never forget
There you go, Barbara. Right now, there's over 300 people listening in. That would be like three congregations. And when this is put up live, this is live streaming. But when it's put up, uploaded to YouTube, you'll have probably 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 people listening in. So good job. Both of you did really good job. Keep cranking away at it, and don't ever give up, in or out. Keep waving that flag of victory. And the last one, leaving the Watchtower, please turn off the light. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Rick.
Barbara,
Nice.
Thank you so much, Isaac.
Yep, there we go.
You got it.
All right.
Bye.
We're going to end the stream.